Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the HR Tech SIG of Cleveland SHRM. My name is John Bernatovich. I'm the co-chair of the Cleveland SHRM HR Tech SIG, and we're delighted to have you as well as our distinguished guest, William Tincup, and presenter, who will be talking about user adoption for HR software. Before we get into the presentation, I wanted to make sure we ran through a few things in regards to the mission of the HR Tech SIG and some of our core competencies. We built this last year in the SHRM calendar year as a forum for local HR community to have updates on the latest HR technology, including best practices, trends, and systems. We've focused on providing HR technology thought leaders, and I think we have delivered. William Tincup is our current speaker. We've had Steve Bowes as well as Tim Sackett speak. So these are kind of the who's who of HR tech thought leaders from our perspective, and we think we've been able to deliver some really rich content, educating you on new trends, best practices, lessons learned, as well as giving you a slant into HR tech in a way that's maybe not as intimidating, and you can bring that back to your organization, your department, as well as an opportunity to network. I know that through a webcast it's difficult for us to network, but feel free to come to our other in-person sessions that we'll get to here in a minute. Here's the team that we have that's putting these events together. I have a co-chair, Michelle Salas, who I'm sure many of you on the broadcast right now know, as well as Kevin Delury and Mike Maduro. So thank you for all of them for helping us pull off events like this. Special thanks to Bridget Klein on the Willery team for helping put together the webcast. And the support from the SHRM board is amazing, as well as the awesome Pam Smith who pulls all this together. My firm Willery is excited to be the event sponsor for today's webcast webinar. And for those of you that don't know who we are, I just wanted to give you a real quick 30-second elevator pitch on our firm. So we're focused solely in HR and payroll. We provide staffing and consulting services that fall into three categories: people, process, and technology. So we help you find your staff and make sure that they're maximizing their potential within your organization, whether that's a temporary, direct hire, executive level. We can support process improvements in your employee life cycle, so everything from onboarding to retirement. So we do that through a sophisticated audit process, ensuring your policies and procedures are where they should be, that you're leveraging strategy and aligning your people, and ultimately helping those organizations that want to transform their HR payroll departments to better support their business need. And we wrap all that with HR technology. So we have an entire implementation suite that we bring to clients. We help clients optimize their current technology, and if you're frustrated or challenged by your current HCM provider, we do full-blown vendor selection support. So that's a little bit about Willery, and we are the sponsor for today's webinar. It's a call out to any companies that maybe are on and listening that may have an interest in getting your organization in front of people that are talking about and thinking about HR technology. We would love the chance to have additional sponsors. We do those through showcasing them either as a title sponsor or as an event sponsor like Willery is today. And then we also are looking for great speakers. If you know of anyone that you think might be of interest to the larger community, please feel free to introduce them to us. As far as what's next, we have two other events on the schedule, one in February 2018 and one in the spring of 2018. And there'll actually be a joint event that we're doing with the SMA of the SHRM chapter. So we'll be doing kind of a talent acquisition, HR technology slant, and then also another event. So look forward to that in future communication coming from SHRM. I do want to also make sure that you guys are aware of the next SHRM event, which is a legal affairs conference. It's at BW on the 1st of December. You can register through the SHRM website. Because our distinguished speaker has over 300,000 followers on Twitter, I thought it would be appropriate to make sure that he and we utilize social media as we're taking part in today's webinar. So please take a look at William Tincup's handle, as well as Willery as the sponsor, Cleveland SHRM, and then feel free to use the hashtag HRTechCLE when you are tweeting out in regards to today's event. So without any further ado, I'm going to go ahead and introduce William, and then we're going to take about 30 seconds to transition the slide deck over to him, because this is a webcast. We are doing it virtually, and William lives in the Dallas-Fort Worth area in Texas, and Bridget and I are broadcasting right here from Willery's headquarters in Akron. So give me a minute here to introduce William. I'm going to read through his bio, and then we're going to get things started. So William's the president of Recruiting Daily. He's a writer, speaker, advisor, consultant, investor, storyteller, and teacher who's written over 200 HR articles, spoken at over 150 HR and recruiting conferences, and conducted over 1,000 HR podcasts. William prides himself on being easy to find on the internet, so Google him and connect via Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. William served on a board of advisors of a multitude of organizations. There were too many of them for me to list, so congratulations to William on his diverse support of those companies. He's a graduate of the University of Alabama of Birmingham with a BA in art history. He also earned an MA in American Indian Studies from the University of Arizona, and a local shout out, MBA from Case Western Reserve. And as I mentioned, he currently resides in Dallas, Texas. So I want to give William a big shout out in regards to a welcome from Cleveland SHRM, and then we're going to go through the transition, and we're going to actually start off with some questions to get things going with the webinar. So be patient with us as we go ahead and change presenters to William so he can show off his screen.
All righty.
Welcome, William, to Cleveland SHRM.
Absolutely, happy to be here. Can you see my screen as you need to?
I can see it without any issues. So let me go ahead and just give one other quick piece of insight to the group. In the control panel, at any time throughout the course of William's presentation, please do not hesitate to ask questions. Use that form, and then at the end of the presentation, which we think will take about an hour or so, we've left time for those questions to be answered. And in advance of that, we thought we would warm things up with some Q&A that we got in advance of today's presentation, just to get a chance for you to get to know William. So the first question is a zinger, and we'll start with this, William, if you're okay with it.
Sure.
What's the #1 mistake that companies make when it comes to not getting users to adopt new HR software?
Well, it's a combination of a couple things. One is they blindside. Let's switch out our performance management software, our payroll software, and whilst a small group of people might know, maybe not everyone knows. So on one side, what you have is the shock and awe of someone who was competent, confident in software, might even have been a good employee, high morale, you know, top performer, and all of a sudden you just rip the carpet out from underneath them and you switched out software. So on one side it's that, the shock and awe. The second thing, and probably the larger issue that really gets in the way, is training. You know, at the end of the day, no matter how intuitive the software is, no matter how easy the software looks like it is, and there's a lot of software these days that just looks like, oh my God, I could just get in there and mill about and do my job. There's always an old way and a new way, and so there's always the delta of change, and so you got to train people. You got to train people, and you got to invest in training. And so the number one thing that holds people back from adopting software is training.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. I just have two more real quick before we get into it. How long do you expect it would take for users to adopt the new HR technology?
Well, so that's a great question. And what you have and you know, when you look down at your paper in front of you or whatever, draw a bell curve. And in that bell curve, what you have is the adoption life cycle. On one end, the left end, is you have laggards, people that are just slow to use technology. And at the top end of the bell curve, you have people that are about on pace. You know, they get new technologies into their life, and they kind of feel their way through it. And then on the right side of that bell curve is you have what's called early adopters, people that just get technology and can consume it fast and get there fast. And so when you look at the entire bell curve, if you want to speed things up, there's a couple different ways. You can put rewards and recognitions in place. You can put certifications in place. Or you can put a buddy system where you take your early adopters, you know, the people that adopted your technology the fastest, and put them with the laggards and make buddy programs out of that, to where what you're really trying to do is get the laggards of technology up to where they're at pace. And what you're trying to do is get the people that are at pace to where they're adopting faster. And this is all technology, by the way. We're not just talking about HR recruiting technology. I mean, some of us are old enough to remember the fax machine. When the fax machine first landed at the office, there were gals and guys that just got it. Just could walk up to it, beep, bop, beep, boop, bop, beep, beep, put it in the paper and go. And then there were people that were terrified of it. Absolutely terrified of it, and really never really wanted to learn it. And so true of the fax machine and the copier and the printer is so true as HR software. It's the same thing. It's just a technology adoption life cycle. And so what we need to do as leaders is we need to see the life cycle, understand that our employees are well within that life cycle, plot, plan, and try to figure out ways to move them faster through that life cycle.
Awesome. I always hated how the paper came out of those fax machines like that. Like, man, it felt so strange when you got a fax. It was always odd.
Well,
thanks for taking me back today and admitting that I recognize the fax machine.
My terror was because I was a cash register at a grocery store, my terror was the receipt tape. When the receipt tape would end, that was my terror. My personal terror was when the receipt tape came to its natural end.
Yes. Understood. All right, last one before we get into it. Do you think companies should consider a different strategy for each user type, like an administrator, employees, and supervisors?
Oh, absolutely. First of all, yes to those, but I want you to even go further than that. Remember what we just said about laggards, on pace, and early adopters. And so you're going to want to look at that as well. Because you could say, okay, we have administrators all in this class. Well, within the administrative class, you still have a bell curve of, even within the administrators, you're going to have some administrators that are laggards and some that are early adopters. You're also, to further complexify that, you are also going to have learning differences and learning styles. Let me explain that. Learning styles being how one likes to learn. Learning differences are the barriers to learning, like dyslexia. Do we know how many of our employees have dyslexia? And the reason that something like that would be important is if we're training them and we're putting, I don't know, PDFs in front of them as training material, is that really helping them? So on the one side of the question, which should we consider a different strategy? Absolutely. Because they need different things. The administrators are going to want to use and bend the technology. They're going to want to get different things out of the technology than a layperson. So yes, but you're going to have to adapt your strategy to make sure that you're hitting all of that life cycle and also potentially the learning styles and learning differences within. And that's true of the administrators, employees, supervisors, executives, board members, you know, the whole bit. You want to cut that up, slice that audience a couple different ways, and create your own bell curves. Start putting some buddy systems together, and really kind of really understand the learning styles and learning differences of each one of those groups to maximize adoption.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for getting things kicked off in that
Sure.
to warm the
Sure.
crowd up, and we'll let you roll into the rest of your presentation. Back to ask questions.
I tell you, I love Q&A. I think it's actually the best way to start a session because it gets people kind of thinking about their own situation. I really would. John's already done a great job of asking you. You know, put your questions in. You got them. You're here. Thank you. You got some questions. It doesn't matter what they are. Throw them into the queue. And if we don't get to some of the questions, tweet them. You know, use that hashtag. Tweet them to us, and I'll try to answer them. You know, after the bit. All right, so I've got a couple things that I want to go through with you today. Obviously, everything's about user adoption. But in order to set the stage up for user adoption, I needed to kind of use a couple other things to really kind of get you to understand where user adoption lies and kind of your overall matrix. Okay, so let's start with the HCM market. The market of HR and recruiting software. The PowerPoint slide that you're looking at right now is probably one of the worst PowerPoint slides ever created, and I created it, so I can say that. But I want to preface this by saying there are over 23,000 recruiting and HR products in the world. Okay, let that settle in for just a moment. SAP, Oracle, Workday, Ultimate Software, Ceridian, Paycor, Paycom, keep going. All of them have multiple products, and no two businesses have the exact same technology stack in the world. No two businesses have the exact same stack. That's been developed at the same pace. What I wanted to create with this PowerPoint is a way to kind of think of the world and say, well, whilst this is only 40 categories of software, and we know that there's more categories of software, this might be a way for you to start thinking about how do these things go together. And so when you think of payroll and benefits or payroll and records, what's some of that stuff that goes there? Time and attendance and scheduling and workforce management. When you think of strategy and planning, compensation and succession and advocacy and organizational charting, you know, it's really just a framework. And where my framework came from, again, the ugliest slide on the planet, is I've been a friend of Josh Burson, I don't know, probably 12 years now. And Josh built, back when he had a Burson and Associates, was just an e-learning an analyst firm, he built one of these models. And you can go into Google and type in talent management framework and hit images, and you'll see the historic images that they've created. And none of them really encapsulate everything. It's kind of like a real simplistic way of looking at learning, performance, comp, you know, and so I wanted to have something a little bit more difficult, a little bit more inclusive. But even this, whilst ugly, even this doesn't cover all the different types of technology that you can use. And so on one level, why I want to talk about that is if you're ever overwhelmed with what you could buy or what technologies do you need, I'm here to tell you that there's a reason that you're overwhelmed, because there is so much technology at your disposal, and it really kind of gets down to what are you trying to solve, what are the business initiatives, and does this software connect with the other things that I care about, and does it do what the salespeople say it would do. So I want you to look at it. You can laugh at the PowerPoint slide, I really don't mind, but you might want to start thinking of your own framework and other things that need to be added. And in your organization, you might not need collaboration technology. That might not be an important part of what you do. Okay, that's fine. Scratch it off the list. But there might be something else. Okay? So this is kind of a map of a market, and it's just a framework. I purposely tell people put an asterisk next to it because it's just one, and there's tons of other ones that you could create. All right. Well, let's get into user adoption. User adoption. How do we get people to use the software that we buy? So starting off, one of the things I would tell you is that the goal isn't just adoption and consumption and usage. We used to think that the world of software was, okay, we just got to get them to use it. We got to get them to consume it. We got to get them, we got to get usage. We got to get them to adopt it. And the truth is, what you're really shooting for is we want to get employees to love the software that they use. That's what we really want. We need to shoot higher. And the reason we need to shoot higher there is their use of software at our business is also a part of their engagement. So let that sink in for just a second. If you've got an employee that's maybe not as engaged, maybe they love the job, maybe they love their boss or the outcomes of the work, but they hate the software they use, then that's going to dramatically impact their engagement scores. So it's important beyond just the functionality of the software. One of the things I'd like to bring to your attention on this slide is who owns user adoption? Do you own it? Okay, let's say you're rolling out Workday. Do you own the adoption of Workday? Or does Workday own the adoption of Workday in your firm? And I would tell you that question is never as straightforward or easy as you might think it is. It's like doubles tennis. You think the other gal has the ball, she thinks you have the ball, and neither of you have the ball. That's user adoption. Okay. So one of the things I would tell you is you've got to have these heart-to-hearts after you buy software, maybe even if you're working with some implementation firms, is okay, who owns user adoption? How do we know we've reached that goal of user adoption? What does it look like? What are the metrics? What are the best practices? What are we really trying to achieve? How do we achieve them? And how do we all agree of what success is? What is that? Is it every day everyone logs in? Is it time in the system? Is it a certification program that comes along with the system? Again, each one of these systems you can do something different, but it's the agreement. It's the discussion, the discussion on the front end of who owns this, how are we going to agree what's success, and what are we going to do if we don't reach success? So that's some of the first things I want to talk about. There's 10 things here that I'm really going to go into and give you some tips and tricks into how to create user adoption, how to get people to use software. And by the way, I know these slides are probably going to be available to you. So I know how I am, in webinars. I'm writing notes furiously, and that's okay. But I think that they're going to make this available to the SIG down the road. So just kind of keep that in mind. So these 10 things are really kind of get into the tips and tricks of what's going on in adoption. So communications. One of the first questions that we had was, what's a barrier? One of the barriers is just ripping out software that people are comfortable with and putting in probably better software, but doing it in a way where the people didn't know about it. So one of the things I would tell you is you got to think like a marketer, think like a PR firm here, and you've got to create communications out to these groups of people that kind of start the process of here's what's changing. old software is being sunset and not supported. We've got to make a change. We're going through a buy cycle. It'll take 6 months. You can all come in and look at the demos. We'll make a selection. Then we'll do an implementation. Kind of sounds like a lot, but actually that's the point of getting them to understand where in the process they are in terms of this user adoption. Okay? Because if you just show up on a Friday and say, oh yeah, we ripped out Paycor, and I mean, yeah, ish, and we're going to start using ADP on Monday. People won't revolt. It's not that. It's just they're going to feel like they weren't a part of the process. And what I would tell you is getting them to feel like they're a part of the process is half the battle. Whether or not they're a part of the process or not, questionable. In different ways you could do different things there to make them feel that way, but making them feel like they were a part of. So communication, comms, very important to think of your communication program and how you're going to communicate where you are in the process, on the front end, during the middle, after it's done, what's coming next. All of that stuff that's done really well in marketing and marketing communications, we need to, in HR, do a better job of communicating change. And that's what this really is, change. We're just changing software. Kind of sounds like it's no big deal, but it is a huge deal to people. One of the things we can do in assessments is we can learn how people like to learn, and not just the learning styles and learning differences, but also what types of anxieties do they have around change. I mean, dare I say, if I were to ask you, of all your employees, when it comes down to technology change, what does it look like? How many people are really going to feel that anxiety of technology change? Most HR leaders wouldn't really know. We need to know that. There's ways to assess for it. There's ways to assess to find out who's going to have anxiety as it relates to changing technology. But really, that learning styles, learning differences, all things that are easily to assess for. I mean stuff right off the shelf assessments that you can use to find out both styles and learning differences. Let's find that out, because then once we know, we can actually manufacture programs to then help the people where they need the help. But we got to assess. We have to know ourselves in order to then change. Training, I would tell you, and God knows I've been doing this for so long that I remember where training was a P&L for a lot of software companies. So software companies, hell, I'll just use brands if you don't mind. Ultimate Software years ago used to charge for training. Okay, so you license the software, SaaS, so you're buying it over the internet. Depending on the different training regimen, they would then charge you based on whatever regimen. You want it in person, you want it webinars, you want, whatever you want. We're just going to charge you for that. And what would happen one by one is the CFOs would get a hold of this and they would delete the training budget. So now think of that. You're buying new software and you're not getting trained in the software. Okay, so why are we getting new software if we're not going to get trained? Now, fast forward, Ultimate's changed their philosophy, by the way, but also a lot of software firms have baked training into their sales cost. Okay, and I think that's a better model, where they come to you and say, hey, you got new employees, we need to train them. You need us to come on site and do a big workshop, we're going to train them. You want to do one-on-one training, let them tool around the software, we're going to train them. Because for them, training equals churn. If you buy software and you're not trained, at the end of your contract, you're going to leave. And that means they just lost recurring revenue. What software companies don't like is losing recurring revenue. So what I would tell you is, and we'll get to this in a little bit, don't buy software where they're not going to have a very sophisticated training regimen for you. Okay, so now I'll talk to you like a buyer. I'm going to do this a little bit more later in the show, but I really want you to use your buying power here, because training is the #1 thing. You got to get people trained in the software. If you don't get people trained in the software, you may as well not buy the software. Okay, training is that critical. And anybody that says, oh, it's intuitive, it's easy, you just get in, you'll learn it yourself, that's all lies. That's all lies. Anyone that says that's just a liar, period, end of story. Okay? So training, critical. Onboarding. All right, so we do a relatively decent job at onboarding for employees. Employees come in, we got the binder, we show them where the bathroom is, we take them through this process, they get to know people, blah, 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 blah. Well, what do we do with onboarding as it relates to new software? You know, why don't we have a special party? Why don't we have cake, champagne? Like, why isn't there a bit where it's like, hey, we just launched, we're all using this new performance management software application. Let's have a party. Let's do a bit together, because you know what? Let's recognize none of it was easy. It's not going to be easy, but we're onboarding. We're starting that journey, just like a new employee starting the journey of your company. I think this is a great way to work with vendors, by the way. I think this right here is a wonderful way to go to a vendor and say, hey, we want to do something special. When we're ready to onboard, the employees, let's do a bit. Let's have cake. Y'all come in, bring some swag. Maybe let's go have a golf tournament. Let's do a bit, and let's really get people excited about the new software. And you'll be surprised, but vendors are okay with that. They want you to be happy, and they want you to be excited about using this new software. And so they're willing to actually do things that are a little bit outside the box. But we need to think about onboarding of people into software as the way that we think of onboarding with employees into the company. Change. Right, so no one likes change. Period. Short story, right? But like I said earlier, you do have the levels of adoption. You have that bell curve, if you will, where you have the laggards and on pace and early adopters. You need to develop your different process touches when you're going to touch people to find out how they're dealing with change. But just know in the back of your head, no one likes change. And just, it's the simple things. We just went from a brand new copier that we all love. We've had it for 6 months, and we're going to rip that one out, and we're going to put in a brand new one. And the new one is awesome, but it's change. It's that, oh, now I got to figure out, how do I start? How do I load the paper? Do I put in my code? Do I put in the customer code? How do I do that? How do I get it to staple? Like that change, even though that's easy and you'll figure it out, it's still change. And what I want you to think about there is there's the old way, and then there's a new way. And it's the delta between the two. Old way, new way. Old way, new way. Delta between the two, that's change. Everyone hates change. So our job in HR is to figure out how to get people over that hump and into new change. Okay, so where they see the benefits, they understand how to use it and leverage it and adopt it, and they're on about their business. That's it. But everyone hates change. Oh my goodness. Performance. So something to think about if you really want to drive adoption of software. One tactic I would tell you, add it to their performance review. So let's say it's a recruiter and you've just rolled out a new ATS, and ATS is great, everybody's happy, blah, 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 blah. But you really want to make sure that the recruiter is using your ATS. Add it to their performance review. Usage, mastery of the ATS is a part of their job. And you can do this with any technology. You can do this with any technology that's at the firm. You put it into their performance review. And give them some time. Let them learn. If you can, develop a certification program with the vendor and get them to a place where they can have some success, feel successful, and then add it to their performance review. Guess what? You add it to their performance review, they're going to adopt the software. Right? That's we're simple like that as human beings. But you got to add it to their job description, because if you don't, then it's still off to the side. It's like, well, I do my job, and I have the software over here that I use. And I'm suggesting that you put those two together, Hansel and Gretel. Succession. So one of the things I'd like for you to think about as it relates to user adoption is mission critical positions. Let's say it's a global payroll solution that you're talking about, and your 3 global payroll people are all in northern, New Jersey, and Hurricane Sandy happens. What happens now? You can't get out payroll. Everything's underwater. Nothing's redundant. So one of the things I would tell you is, in every software application that you have, start to figure out, okay, who's critical? Where are all my roles? And how do I cross-train to make sure, force majeure? Is it wildfires or tornadoes or hurricanes or, God forbid, shootings or whatever that happens in our world? What can we do to protect and create business continuity? And so that's us thinking about succession, not in the way that we historically think about succession from a people perspective, because we historically think about that, of who's going to succeed who. This is really more of a narrow approach of who needs to be our plan for if things go badly in software. And what does that look like? Rewards. Again, this is something you can do with your vendors, and it's a great way to get people to use software. Is you create a rewards and recognition system with your vendors. So let's just say that Starbucks coffee, Caribou coffee, etc., works at your firm. $20 gift certificate to Caribou. It just works. Okay, well, you go to your vendor partner and say, listen, we have a certification program. The first 100 people that pass the certification program get a $20 gift certificate to Caribou Coffee. Guess what? The vendors are happy about that, because the faster they get people certified, the faster they know they're not going to get ripped out of here at the end of the contract. Everybody wins. But rewards and recognition works at every firm. Okay? It works at every firm. It just works differently at every firm. There's always something nuanced at each different firm. And so that's what we've got to unlock, is what works at your firm. Is it trips to Paris? Is it, is it Segway, tours? Like what's the bit? There's something that works. And in finding out what works, you work with your vendor and say, hey, listen, we'll partially fund it. You guys help fund it, build the certification test. Let's really kind of get people to certify, and then we'll do some train the trainer model, and we'll get them to help the laggards kind of get up and get them certified. And rewards and recognition is a great way to do that. fantastic way. So engagement, the one thing I want to say about engagement is user conferences. Almost every software company that you would buy of substance has a user conference. And I know I'm spending your money like left and right here, and I apologize because I know it's not that easy. But Paycor, Paycom, ADP, Ceridian, Ultimate, Workday, Success Factors, throw a dart, name somebody, and they have a user conference. Now, what's great about a user conference is it's usually practitioners talking to other practitioners about how they're using the software, how they're bending the software. And the best part of that is you can use this as a contest to the person that's the most certified or that's trained the most of your laggards up to a point where they understand the system. And you send that gal, off to Vegas. They go to, let's say it's Ceridian. They go to Ceridian Insights, and they drop in there for 3 days, and they learn about all the new things that are happening at Ceridian. And then they come back, and you ask them to teach everyone what's going on at Ceridian. It's a great way to do engagement on one end and really recognize that, on one side of this, you're really doing an engagement play, but you're also doing a training and development play. And the more that person knows of that software, the more happy they are, their morale goes up, their personal engagement goes up. So metrics, what I would tell you about metrics is everyone's got something a bit different. It could be time in the system. It could be time between logins. Okay, how many users are in there simultaneously? What type of questions are being asked? What I would suggest to you is when you work with your vendor partners, ask them, what are the metrics I need to be keeping an eye on? What's the bit? And if they tell you, hey, it's real simple, if it's a weekly payroll, you should be looking at the metric. The payroll should be done by Tuesday. That's the metric. If it's not done by Tuesday, there's a problem. Oh, okay. Okay. So each software might have something a little bit different, but you've got to have command of what that metric is. Okay? All right. I want to dig into a tertiary topic, and I won't spend too much time here, but I really want to kind of give you, I did a ton of research on implementations and what goes well and what doesn't go well, etc. So I want to kind of just spend 2 or 3 minutes here. So on this slide, what I care to really kind of bring you into is the implementation teams. Having people that are dedicated to making sure that the implementation goes well. So even when you're working with an implementation consulting shop, okay, which is great. Okay, so you got the vendor, you got the consulting shop, you got yourself. All too often, what you have is you have people that it's a part of their job. And it's like, okay, that's Sally. She's 10% in the implementation, and she can't be successful at 10%. Things are moving too fast, and she's never really going to be able to be that effective. What I would say, again, if you're buying software, you've made the decision it's important. When you're implementing the software, you've made the decision it's important. Don't cheap out at this particular motion. Get somebody that's got project experience, project management experience, or application experience. I want one or the other. Like say Sally, let's say it's Ultimate Software is a great example. Sally's worked with Ultimate Software the last 3 jobs. Okay, she's good at it. She knows it, and she knows where the bodies are buried with Ultimate Software. And let's say you're going to have it implemented through a third party. So you got the good folks at Ultimate, you got the good folks at the implementation shop, and you got Sally. Sally is going to know how to really implement that in the best way for your firm because she's done it before. She's a rock star. And if you have Sally pulled out of that and doing other things, then the implementation just won't go as well as it could. Okay? So have somebody on your team be a part of the implementation. Okay? Second thing, and this is going to crush a little bit of your soul, so I want to just kind of just going to take some time out to step on your soul for a moment. The second bullet point, the inevitable disaster. There hasn't been an implementation in HR recruiting software ever in the history of ever that hasn't had an inevitable disaster. Okay? So when you're buying software from somebody and they tell you, oh yeah, our implementation is not a problem, fly by, easy, it's just you won't even have to think about it. First of all, they're either in denial, or they're drunk, or they're stupid, or they're just lying to you. There's always something that goes wrong. You told them your data was perfect, data doesn't turn out to be perfect. You know, they tell you that they can get something done by a Monday, and they can't get it done until that next Thursday. There's always an inevitable disaster. And what I would tell you is character is born out of how you respond to that inevitable disaster. Okay? Because acting like an inevitable disaster is not going to happen, yeah, that's crazy talk. Okay? It's going to happen. It's what are you going to do and how are you going to respond when it happens? Okay? Critical. Every implementation, make note, there's always going to be an inevitable disaster. Now I want to briefly talk to you about 7-point satisfaction. This is things that I want you to consider as you buy and think about software. So I want you to think of these 7 things: product, sales, negotiation, implementation, training, adoption, and support. Okay? So in the product, one of the questions that I want you to ask yourself is, how do we do this now? Okay? If it's recruiting, how do we do recruiting? Are we using Excel, pivot tables, using some free application we got off the web? What are we doing to use to do this right now? Because you're displacing that, and that's why it's important to understand how you're doing it now. Okay? Sales. And again, I might step on your soul yet again. In the sales process with software vendors, you're being treated at the best that you're going to be treated in that relationship. Okay? So if they're taking you out for wine, you're going to play some golf, they're showing you this really fancy demo, they're doing all this fun stuff, they're sending you some books, some swag. Okay, that's as good as that's going to get, and it won't get that good ever again. Okay? They're in sales. Their job is to make you feel good and show you an outlandish, great demo. Don't hate them. Just understand the game. That's all I ask you to do. Understand when you're being wooed that you're being wooed. Just understand the game. If you understand the game, you'll be fine. You'll understand what they're doing and why it's important to them, and then what comes next. Okay? But if they treat you badly in sales, and this is important, if you get treated badly, like say you call up company X and we can't get anybody out there to talk to you for a couple weeks. Call back a couple weeks. Oh yeah, can't get anybody out there for a couple weeks. Stop calling them. Okay? Move on to the next software application. They're sending you the signal that you don't matter to us. And if they're willing to do that in sales, it gets no better as you sign a contract and go into implementation and into usage. So you almost want to heed, how am I being treated in sales? Do I feel good about this relationship? I mean, I understand that they're trying to woo me. All right, that's fine. But is it disrespectful? If it's disrespectful there, it's going to continue to be disrespectful throughout the life of the relationship with that vendor. Negotiation. So the most power you have, and you don't have much, but the most power you have is when your pen is on top of the piece of paper that's the contract. The moment you write your name on that contract, most of your power went away. So get it all in. If there's something you need in negotiation, get it in before you sign the contract. Because if you think that something's going to get added after the contract, yeah, that's not going to happen. Ever. So you have one shot at this. You're signing the contract, you got your pen above the paper, might even have sent it off to procurement, you got it back, you got the pen on the paper. Now's the time. Now's the time now to ask for all the things that you want. I want you to come and be on site and train our employees once a month for 2 years. And they'll hem and haw, and I don't know, and we can't do it. It's like, well, I can't sign the contract until you say yes. And you'll be shocked to learn that they'll say yes, and now you've got it in the contract. But if you sign your Jane Hancock, to that contract, nothing gets added that doesn't have an invoice attached to it. Okay? And CFOs hate variable expenses. Period, end of story. That's how most HR people get fired, is because CFOs hate variable invoices. So get it in there while you can. Okay? One of the questions you definitely want to ask, it's towards the bottom of the slide, it's who owns the data. This has become, it was a big thing in payroll, where payroll companies would own your data. SAP would own your data. And then you had to buy your data, or you had to start over. So one of the things I just want you to get in the habit of asking is like, who owns this data? Do we co-own it? That's fine. Do I own it? Great. As long as they don't own it. That's all I care about. Implementation. So the number one thing here is I want you to meet the implementation team before you sign the contract. Implementations come down to you got to have somebody that's great at time management and project management. All right, and that could be your team or their team. Doesn't matter. You got to have somebody that really understands how to bend the product. Again, that could be your team or their team. Okay, and the third thing that this comes down to is chemistry. Do I like Sally? Do I like Jim? Does Jim like Bill? Does Bill like Helen? And you'd be surprised to learn at how many implementations fail, not because of the technology, but because of the chemistry of the team. So what I want you to do, again, when you have that power, that pen above the paper, meet your implementation team. Tell them, say, hey, I want to meet my implementation. Oh, we can't really do that. We don't know who's on the bench and who's coming up next. Well, I can't sign the contract until I meet my implementation team. Okay. Turns out the implementation team will show up in your office next week. That's just kind of how that works. So you've got to meet them, because you just got to be able to look across the room and go, okay, you know what? I get these people. I get these people. We're going to be all right. We're going to be all right. We'll make mistakes. They'll make mistakes, but we'll be all right because I like them. I can go have beer with them. I go to a concert with them. I can go hang out with them. I like the people. I think they like me. We're going to be fine. Meet your implementation team. Absolutely correct. We won't be training to death too much more, but again, single biggest barrier to user adoption, tattoo it on your forearm, training. Training solves at least 80% of the user adoption problems. And you got to get it baked in. You got to talk about it. You got to get it in the contract. You got to get them in to where they want to train your people and you want to get trained. And I'm talking about even new employees that come on 3 years later, got to train them. Got to find ways to get those folks up and running in the software. So adoption is a kind of a cadre of all of these things that we don't want just people adopting the software, using the software, consuming the software. We want our users to love the software. Okay, so look down at your smartphone that's somewhere sitting on your desk in front of you. I guarantee that there's an app on that phone that you love. Like if I took it off your phone, you'd be really, really mad at me. Okay, mine just happens to be Instagram. I love Instagram. I can't explain it, and you know, at my age, I probably should love something else, a little bit more age appropriate. But I love Instagram. If you took Instagram off my smartphone, there'd be problems. There'd be problems. And in Texas, we have lots of guns. I kid. I totally kid. But we would have problems. And I would have Instagram on my phone back. Okay. That's adoption of HR software. That's adoption of recruiting software. We want people to love the software they use. Okay, not just like it. We want them to love it, not just use it. Love it. Consume it. Love it. We want them to love the software. In support, what we want is we want people to take care of us in the ways that we need to be taken care of. Do they meet you where you need? Okay. Oh, we offer it's a 24-hour ticket, and you submit a ticket, and within 24 hours, we'll get you an email back. Well, if you're dealing with something that's life and death or critical to deadlines, 24-hour support doesn't help you. It's actually as if they don't have support. You're going to need something more. You're going to need something like 24/7 support. So looking at your business and looking at what you need in the support, that's the type of support that you have to buy from them. And I don't mind buying extra support. Okay, I don't like buying training, but I don't mind buying support. If you're going to give me, 365, 24/7, and I'm going to have that type of access, I don't mind if I have to pay a little bit more for that, if that's what my business dictates. Okay, but look at your business, look at how it dictates. If you can withstand a 24/7 or 24-hour email response, then that's fine. But make sure it fits you. That's the key in support. It's got to fit you and your uniqueness. So as you look at these peer review questions on this, you go around the product. Does it do what this? Does it do what it says they were going to do? Sales. Would you purchase from these people again? Negotiation. Was it fair? Meaning, did you give up on some things? Did they give up on some things? Did you meet in the middle, and was it fair? Implementation. How did it go? What grade would you give them and yourself? Training. Did they train everyone? Adoption. Are employees using the technology? We start with usage, but we're going towards love. Support. Are they there for you now? Buying trends. Let me go through a couple of these because I think they're important, because I think y'all are all kind of in a buy cycle for 2018, and I think this would help you. So these are the 10 things that I just want to put on your the front of your mind in terms as you buy. Okay. Speed is how fast are you getting the technology. Okay. So years ago we used to think in months and years. We do a PeopleSoft implementation. It took 18 months. Okay. The applications that come out today are thinking in seconds and minutes and hours. Okay, that's how they're thinking. They want you into their technology as fast as humanly possible. So one of the things I want you to do as a buyer is ask the question, how fast can we get into technology? It'll take about 9 months. 9 months? What are we building, like a second, like, what are we doing here? Building another Grand Canyon? Like, why does it take that long? So speed kind of dictates this old way of thinking and new way of thinking. New way of thinking is seconds, minutes, hours, maybe even days. Old way of thinking, years, months. You want technology that's on the front end of that in speed. Predictive. Is the technology telling me things that I did not know? Okay? Most HR databases, performance, succession, ATS, whatever, they're dumb databases. They don't really tell you anything. You take data, you put data in there, you don't really expect the data to tell you anything. You don't expect the technology to tell you anything. The newer technologies coming to market are predictive insofar as they take all that data and then they predict what's next. And that's one of the things that you want to be buying on is, does the technology help me predict? Does it help me predict the future? The opposite side of that is reflective. The data that's in that dumb database, in the newer database, can it tell me what just happened? Tuesday's your best interview day. Sally's your best interview person. James has the best interview question. Here's what's just happened in the last 6 months, and the technology is reflective. It's reflective of what just happened. Connectivity, you want all your technology and your entire HR technology stack to be connected to one another. And gone are the days where, it was hard. We had to piece together and connect these things. Newer technologies, let's take Greenhouse as an ATS. Greenhouse as an ATS is an open API system, and you can connect Greenhouse to literally any other technology because of the API, and you can do it in minutes. It's click, 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 done. Now they're connected. So you want to buy technologies. This is a buying question. Is this technology that I'm buying, has it already connected to things? Does it have an ecosystem in which it already is connected to a ton of technologies? If that's a no or stop talking to them. Walk away. You want to buy from people that their technologies are connected to other technologies in your technology stack. Period, end of story. Training, again, notice how we kind of got back to training 5 different times in the presentation, right? Training is important because, again, you're not going to get the adoption. You're not going to get that usage. You're not going to get that consumption. You're not going to get that love if you don't get training. Get it built in. How do they do it? What's their training mantra? How do they go about that? What's their system? Do they do training in application? Oh, now that's cool. That's actually a newer trend. SuccessFactors has this, where you can be in SuccessFactors, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, I haven't done a performance review forever. Boom, video pops up in SuccessFactors. Hey, Jim, notice you haven't been here in a while. Here's what's new, and here's how to get started. Video training inside the application. Boom, are you kidding me? It's great training. But you've got to ask the question as a buyer. You're the one that has to ask the question about how they go about training your users. Responsive is a kind of a fancy way of saying, does the technology work where it needs to work? Okay, so truckers in Arkansas don't have desktop computers. They don't have mobile phones either. They have iPads. They do FaceTime, and they have iPads. Does your time and attendance software work on an iPad? Right? So depending on your audience and what you have as an audience, the technology's got to work where your audience is. The best technologies in the world in HR and recruiting are called responsive design, and they work across all the different display screens. So if you have it on an iPhone, works there. If you have it on a iPad, works there. Pull it up on your desktop with 5 monitors, works there. It works where you want to work, which is critical. Technology's got to work where you want it to work, not vice versa. Like, oh, I got to go to the terminal and I got to do the work there because it doesn't work on my iPhone. Okay, gone are those days. And so this yet is a great question to ask the technology company. Are you mobile responsive? And you can say it in a fancy way, or you can just ask them, like, does it work here, here, and here? And if it does, great, show me. Adaptable. People ask me all the time, what comes first, chicken and egg? Technology or process? Let me go ahead and solve that for you. Process always comes first. Always. If it's a recruiting process, you could put in fear. I could use Excel to do recruiting in a 1,000-person firm if I have a bulletproof recruiting process. No one wants to hear that, but I could. But if I don't have a great recruiting process, it all blows apart. So process is number one. Then technology is number two. Okay? So one of the things you look for in new tech is, can you change your process? You want technologies that are moldable, okay, to where they can mold around new process. Okay, you want them to be not rigid. You want them to be flexible enough to move around new process. Modeling is important insofar as forecasting, and the best SaaS software applications have what's called it's a playpen. It's a little area where it's not touching live data, but you can go in and you can forecast things. Okay, we're about to acquire a 12,000-person firm. Oh, okay. What does that look like? How does that change our comp data? How does that change our performance metrics? How do we onboard? How do we do this? How do we do that? And so it's an area essentially where you can model change. You can model change of layoffs, model change of ads, all kinds of stuff. You know, we're changing corporate headquarters. You want to model that and see what's different. You want technology that can be modeled. That's it. We live in a world where there are ratings, which one of the things you're going to want to, in your technology, is you're going to want to know how people feel about the technology you're buying. Okay? You don't want to wake up one day and go, you know, I made the best decision. We picked ADP. Everyone loved it, got it adopted. It's going great, only to find out that your team hates ADP. Okay, that's why ratings are important inside software. You need to know what they think of the software purchases that you made. Okay, that's important because you don't want to be blindsided by not knowing. Cleansing. Another thing to ask your technology vendors about is, does this technology help me identify bad data, dirty data, cloudy data, and does it help me cleanse that data? Okay, you want technology that helps you identify that data so that you can cleanse it, so that you can make better, more informed decisions based on data. Okay, that's where HR is going, data-driven decisions. Okay, and we all know we're sitting on some pretty crappy data, and it's not perfect, and we all get it. But what you want to buy is technology that helps you cleanse that data. Okay, so ask people when you're buying. It's like, okay, how does this make my data better? Like, what can I do to make sure that I don't wake up one day and I'm just sitting on top of terrible data? Alrighty, so a couple things. I don't have my YouTube account on here, but I do have a YouTube account. So this is me. This is all the different places you can find me. I'm relatively easy to find on the internet, and you know, like John said, I went to Weatherhead. I got my MBA there in the late '90s, and I lived in Shaker Heights. And I loved it, but all my family's here in Texas, so I moved back home after business school. But I absolutely loved my time in Cleveland. I appreciate y'all having me on today, and any questions that you have, we can just kind of paw our way through them.
All right, cool. Thank you, William. Awesome job. Very informative and some compelling, direct suggestions, which I appreciated very much. There were a few questions. One of them was about the slide deck. Will we receive the slide deck? So yes, we'll get that out to you, as well as we did record the webinar, so that will come out in the communication as well, in case you missed a point or wanted to refresh or had to take a call if by chance during the webinar. That was from Nicole. We did also get a question from Tammy. She suggested that many companies go live with a new system and are hesitant to communicate to their employees until they're close to go live, just in case something happens and need to move the go live date. Is there any way that you would suggest to have them do that sooner?
Yeah, I think you treat go live, because first of all, go live, go live is kind of a misnomer. And I think that's almost how we have to treat it. It's go live. Like, what is go live? Okay, so you go live, and then all of a sudden, you just hired in 10 new employees. Well, what's go live for them? So I think what I would do is I would err on the side of being honest with employees and say, hey, this is what we've all budgeted. This is where we've been working towards. Anything can happen. We're still doing with a lot of data, and we're still doing with a lot of process improvement. So it might be this day, and it might be a week later. But we don't want to blindside you. And we want to cards face up, we want to tell you the truth, and go live is one of these things. It's nebulous, it changes, and it's okay that it changes. It's almost like the rocket ship when we used to send spaceships, up. It's like, well, we have a date, and everybody's working towards that date, but if it's cloudy and rainy on that date, well, the rocket ship didn't go up. It was okay. Like, people got it. It's like, well, yeah, we understand that things can change. I think we underestimate the intelligence of a lot of the people that we work with. And I think if we were to be more honest with them and just tell them, hey, this is where we're at, and this is what we think we're leading here. We're all charging towards the same goal, but the goal might change.
Got it. Great point. There was another question. In terms of recognizing and rewarding employees, rewarding is easy to figure out. How would you recognize employees related to user adoption?
Oh man, you make the first of all, you can do that with certification test. So you build a certification test, and then you put that person right up in front of the rest of the group of people and say, Janet, she finished the certification test, got 110 on it, and we're going to send her to the user conference in Orlando in June, so she can go and learn and bring back knowledge and teach us other things that we can do. So, I mean, there's great ways to use the user conferences of these software companies as ways as a perk to the people that are most apt to take on the technology. And when I say send people to a user conference, I want to make sure that's clear. This is a teaching and training. When Janet's going to the user conference in Orlando, that's not a party. Okay, that's not a party. That's Janet's going to go to sessions and learn how people are really using the tech, so that Janet can come back and teach all of us, and that we get better at using the technology. And so we use that as a way of saying, wait, Janet's badass. Janet just did all this stuff and she did really well. We're going to send Janet because she already has the capability she's going to come back and she's going to teach the rest of us.
Got it. Had another one come in, so keep the questions coming as we have till 1 o'clock, and feel free to use the control panel to bring them in. With all the options that are available, William, how many software vendors would you recommend vetting in the process when exploring new systems, including finalists at proposal stage?
Okay, so the first thing you do is you talk to your peer group. Okay, y'all have a wonderful peer group there, both in northeastern Ohio, but you also got the rest of Ohio. Ohio SHRM down in Cincinnati, they've got a good chapter. So you want to vet with your peer group, and who's taken on so and so. Was it good? Would you change anything? Would you buy from them again? You know, that type of stuff. Second thing you want to do is you want to do some research on Google. You want to do like you do with candidates. You want to go in and kind of look, see if there's anything there you need to be afraid of. You want to go into Glassdoor and look them up and see if there's anything you need to be afraid of. And then when you're talking to them, you want to talk to references, not references that they give you, references of people that decided not to buy from them. So when you're asking the question, because you know everyone's got the 3, 4 references of people that bought from them and they're very happy, I want to talk to people that didn't buy from you. So give me 1 or 2 people that you know you got pretty close in the process with, but for whatever reason it fell apart. Okay, I want to talk to those people. Okay, and if they can't or won't give you those people, they're sending you a signal. Okay, really. I would go deep. You know, if you're going to build a, I don't personally believe in RFPs, so I'll put that my bias aside. But I like 3 vendors, and I like going deep with 3 vendors with a multitude of the audience of people that are going to be using the tech to go through the demos of 3 that you've already vetted. You already got the peer review stuff out. You've already done the Glassdoor stuff. You've already done all of that, and you've come down to 3 that look pretty good. Maybe even connected to some of your other technology, and that's important, by the way. If you're happy at your core, all right. So we'll just use this one as an example. Let's say you're really, really happy at ADP. Okay, been with them for 30 years. You love them. You know, it works for you. You're not really going to be changing ADP anytime soon. Then what I would do is I would go into ADP's ecosystem and look for the other technologies that you'd like to buy. And the reason I would do that is because they're already integrated. And then that's just one less battle that you'd have to fight, is something that you'd have to get integrated. But simply, you know, get it down to 3. Use your peer reviews. Take your entire team through the 3, and really hash it out with your team. You know, it's not a personal decision. It's not Nancy's decision or Jim's decision. It's a group decision. Like, let's really dig into it, and let's make the best decision that we can make together.
Thank you. One last question. You mentioned HR technology that takes seconds, minutes, hours to implement. Do you have any real-life examples of those?
Oh, yeah, tons. Most of them are apps. So think of what, and this is what's really, it's changed our brains. Think of the way that we use our smartphones. We go and find a game or an app inside the Play Store or iTunes or whatever, and we download it and it's crap. We delete it. Well, the apps that are being built for wellness and for engagement and for some of these other things, they're being built exactly that way. They want you, like Goodco is a great example of trying to find its personality assessment. They want you to download it, play a game, play another game, play another game, and now they understand your personality. and you're playing games the whole time. Arctic Shores is another one. There's shit, excuse my French. There's thousands of them because they came out of the gaming and application world, not out of the pure software world. And it's changing everything. It's changing the way that we look at software. Because maybe software doesn't have to be that heavy. Maybe it can be relatively lightweight.
Thank you. And no, 23,000 plus vendors. That'll make you say a few choice words when you have to try to navigate through all that. So
that's
thank
right.
you so much. Well, at this particular point, I don't see any more questions in the Q&A section on the GoToWebinar. So I just wanted to personally thank William on behalf of Cleveland SHRM and the HR Technology SIG. I truly myself enjoyed it. I know we had a lot of great reaction from questions from the group, and we'll go ahead and continue to promote the HR Technology SIG. We can bring and deliver professionals like William to the Cleveland chapter and beyond, especially if we do something like this GoToWebinar. So thank you again, William, for your time, and we'll go ahead and sign off. And till next time.
Absolutely. This was fun. Thank you all very much.